He didn't see her at first, not really. To him, she was just the woman who quietly swept the hallway after hours, long after the last email had been sent and the boardroom lights shut off. But one rainy evening, fate played its card. A stalled elevator, two strangers, an unexpected conversation about dreams they both thought had expired. He was a millionaire CEO, living a life of polished glass and private jets. She was a night cleaner, fighting off exhaustion, with a silent hope for something better. What happened next would change both their lives in a way no one could have predicted. Hi, my beautiful Love and Twilights family. Today, I'm sending you peace for your heart, clarity for your mind, and strength for every challenge you're facing. May your home be filled with love, your dreams guided by purpose, and your days surrounded by people who truly see your worth. If you've ever felt unseen, unappreciated, or taken for granted, this story is especially for you. Because sometimes life reminds us, in the most unexpected ways, that we all deserve to be loved, chosen, and respected. If my stories have ever touched you, made you smile, cry, or reflect, please like this video, leave me a comment, and share it with someone who might need this message today. It helps more than you know. Now, let's dive into today's story, and let your heart do the listening.
Elena Ramos moved through life like a whisper, present, necessary, but rarely noticed. At 32, she had mastered the art of invisibility. Long brown hair tied back with the same worn elastic, uniform 2 sizes too big, and sneakers that had survived 3 winters. Every evening, she clocked in at 7 p.m. and cleaned the 36th floor of Cole and Hartman Global without ever making a sound. The building sparkled because of her. The polished tables, fingerprint-free glass doors, and bathrooms that smelled of citrus all bore her quiet touch. But no one ever asked her name. No one asked about the woman behind the gloves. She lived in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, sharing it with her younger sister Rosa and Rosa's toddler Mila. The 3 of them made do. A pull-out couch served as Elena's bed, a makeshift curtain separated her corner of the room, and late-night silence was rare. But family came first, and Elena had always believed that love was worth more than square footage. She hadn't always been a cleaner. Years ago, Elena had been 2 semesters away from finishing nursing school. She had dreams of working in pediatrics, caring for children, helping mothers, making a difference. But then her father had passed suddenly, and with him went the family's only income. Rosa was still in high school, and Elena did what she had to. She dropped out, took the first job that would have her, and began paying the bills 1 shift at a time. By day, she worked as a caregiver for an elderly woman across town. By night, she scrubbed boardrooms filled with men and women who would never know her name. Her hands were always tired, her back always sore, but her spirit, somehow, remained steady. She wasn't bitter. She was just tired. Some nights, she lingered by the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive suite and stared out at the skyline. Lights glittered in the distance, stretching out toward the harbor. She often imagined what life looked like from those penthouses, where dinner was served warm and life didn't revolve around shift schedules and grocery discounts. But Elena never allowed herself to feel envy. She believed in gratitude, even if life hadn't turned out the way she'd once planned. After all, Mila's giggle in the morning, or Rosa's whispered thank you after dinner, reminded her that she mattered, just not in the ways the world measured worth. Still, there were moments, rare, fleeting, when she wished someone would see her. Not the cleaner. Not the helping hand. Just Elena. It was one of those thoughts that flickered through her mind the night the CEO stayed late. She recognized him instantly, Damien Cole. Everyone knew who he was. He was on the covers of business magazines in the lobby. His smile was confident, but his eyes seemed distant, like he was surrounded by everything and still searching for something. He didn't notice her that night. Of course he didn't. He was standing at the far end of the hallway, speaking quietly on his phone in what sounded like frustration. Elena kept her head down, cart rolling softly behind her, hoping to stay out of the way. Later that night, as she gathered the last of her supplies, she passed his office again. The lights were still on. The door was ajar. She heard him sigh, a deep, tired sound that felt far too familiar. For a moment, she paused, fingers brushing over the spray bottle in her caddy. Something about that sound? It reminded her of the nights she stared out of her window, wondering if she'd ever get her chance to be more than just a name on a timesheet. But she shook the thought away. This was her job. Keep moving. Stay out of sight. Finish the floor, catch the last train home. That's what she did. Every single day. She never expected that life could change in an instant. She certainly didn't expect that moment to be hers. Some people carry the weight of the world and still show up every day with grace. Do you know someone like that? Someone who gives everything they have and asks for nothing in return? If someone just came to mind, tag them below or drop their name in the comments. Let's give them the recognition the world often forgets. They are the quiet heroes among us, and their stories matter. Damien Cole had everything on paper. His face had graced magazine covers. He was invited to speak at Ivy League business schools, interviewed on top financial networks, and routinely called one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. Yet every morning he woke in silence. No one to greet him. No one waiting at the breakfast table. Just the quiet hum of city life echoing against the glass walls of his penthouse. At 38, he had built an empire from the ground up. The Cole name wasn't inherited. It wasn't passed down or gifted. It was forged in grit and long nights and born from loss. Damien was just 19 when the accident happened. One foggy night on Highway 6, his parents' car had hydroplaned off the road. No last goodbyes. No chance to say thank you. He was left with a college acceptance letter in one hand and a funeral bill in the other. He dropped out of school and took the insurance payout, less than most thought but enough to launch his first startup. A tech-based logistics firm, then an acquisition, then another. By 30, he'd already made his first $100 million. But somewhere along the way the excitement dimmed. He didn't even notice it slipping until it was gone. Now he had power, money, respect, but no peace. He spent his days in high-rise boardrooms, surrounded by sleek suits and rehearsed smiles. His nights were quiet, too quiet. The last time he dated someone, the relationship ended with a mutual shrug and a PR statement. There were women who wanted the image, the lifestyle, the sparkle of his world, but rarely the man himself. They didn't want Damien. They wanted Mr. Cole. Most nights, he returned to an immaculate penthouse prepared by assistants. Everything curated. Everything expected. One wall of his home office was lined with awards and honors. Yet on his nightstand there was only a single framed photo. His mother holding a young Damien by the ocean. Her smile was radiant, carefree. That's what he missed most, authentic joy. He had grown used to people saying what they thought he wanted to hear. Used to people watching his wallet before they looked into his eyes. Even his executive team seemed more like actors than colleagues. Everyone performing, no one connecting. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't arrogant. He just stopped expecting anything real. Until that one week in March. It started like any other. Meetings stacked, deadlines tight, his assistant rattling off appointments as he sipped bitter espresso. But things hadn't gone smoothly with a major partner, and Damien was forced to stay late reviewing documents and renegotiating terms. It was well past 11 p.m. when he finally stood from his desk, exhausted and mentally drained. As he stepped into the hallway toward the elevator, he noticed someone quietly cleaning the far end of the corridor. He'd seen her before, briefly in passing, but he had no idea what her name was. For a second their eyes met. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't awkward. Just honest. She didn't look away quickly the way most people did. And there was no trace of fear or awe, just a calm, steady awareness. He stepped into the elevator and exhaled. That was the first moment in weeks that he felt something other than pressure. Later that night, as he leaned on the balcony of his penthouse, wine glass untouched, city lights stretching endlessly below, he remembered the cleaner's face. She didn't flinch. She didn't flatter. She just looked at him. Like a man. Damien couldn't explain it. But he found himself wondering, what was her name? That question lingered. It followed him into the next day's meetings, the boardroom banter, the scripted conversations. While his colleagues were focused on numbers, forecasts, and branding strategies, he found himself distracted. Not by attraction, but by curiosity. He hadn't been curious about a person in a long time. On Wednesday he stayed late again. A part of him told himself it was for work, but deep down he wanted to cross paths with her. He didn't even know what he'd say, or if he'd say anything at all. He just wanted to see if that calm look in her eyes had been real, or if he'd imagined it in his exhaustion. She was there again, headphones in, humming softly to music only she could hear. She worked with such focus. No wasted motion. No complaints. He stepped out of his office to say something, but stopped. She hadn't noticed him, and for some reason, that felt good. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was just being herself. He returned to his office and closed the door. But a thought clung to him. Maybe Real wasn't lost. Maybe it had just been hidden in places he'd never thought to look. Let's be real, success doesn't always bring peace. Have you ever had everything people say should make you happy, and still felt like something was missing? Drop a comment below. Your truth might be the reminder someone else needs today. And if you're someone who values realness over appearances, hit that like button. Let's keep stories like this alive. It was a Thursday night, gray skies, heavy rain, and a tension in the air that felt like everything needed a pause. The building was nearly empty. Most employees had rushed out before the storm hit. But Damien stayed. A deal was falling apart overseas and his phone hadn't stopped ringing in hours. Elena had almost called in sick. Her shoes had a hole in the sole, and she'd gotten caught in the rain at the bus stop. By the time she arrived at work, her socks were soaked and her back ached from helping Rosa move boxes earlier that afternoon. Still, she showed up. She always did. The elevator shuddered as she stepped inside, mop bucket rolling beside her. She pressed the button for the 36th floor and leaned against the side, closing her eyes for a moment. Just as the doors were about to shut, a hand slipped between them. They opened again, and in stepped Damien. He didn't look up from his phone. His jaw was tight, fingers flying across the screen, frustration etched deep in his brow. The silence between them stretched. Not awkward, just still. The elevator rose 2 floors, and then abruptly jerked to a stop. Lights flickered. The floor display blinked. The hum of machinery cut out. Elena instinctively grabbed the railing. Damien stared at the panel. Seriously? He muttered. She reached forward and pressed the emergency button. A static voice came through. We're aware of the issue, sir. The storm caused a temporary outage. We'll have the elevator moving shortly. Damien sighed and shoved his phone in his pocket. Of course. Tonight of all nights. Elena stayed quiet. Her fingers curled around the handle of her mop. He finally looked at her. You okay? She nodded. I've been in worse places than a stuck elevator. That made him pause. Her voice was calm, almost amused. He smiled faintly despite himself. I'm Damien, he said after a moment. I know, she replied, meeting his gaze evenly. You're on all the screens in the lobby. He chuckled. Guess I am. Elena, she added. He blinked. Nice to finally meet you, Elena. She nodded again, then looked away, eyes scanning the ceiling light. So, do you clean the whole building? Just the executive floors. And you do this every night? 6 nights a week. Damien whistled softly. That's a lot. She shrugged. Bills don't pay themselves. He leaned back against the wall. You always this honest? She turned toward him, expression neutral but kind. You asked. Most people don't. That landed differently. Most people didn't. Not with him. They stood in silence for a few minutes, the kind that didn't feel heavy, just open. He noticed the damp cuffs of her pants, the scuffed laces on her shoes, the wear on her hands. You've had a long day, he said. She looked down at her feet. It's a living. Damien tilted his head slightly. Is it what you want to be doing? Elena hesitated, then shook her head. No. But I made peace with that a while ago. What did you want to do? A small smile crossed her lips. Be a nurse. Help people. Life had other plans. He studied her. There was no resentment in her voice. Just truth. I think you probably help more people than you know, he said. She looked surprised. How do you figure? You show up. You keep things going. You do work most people overlook. That matters. For a moment, Elena didn't respond. Then she said softly, "You'd be surprised how rare it is to hear that." The elevator jolted again. Lights steadied. The hum returned. "Looks like we're back," Damien said. As the doors opened to the 36th floor, neither of them moved immediately. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not treating me like I'm made of glass or gold." She gave him a small smile. "You're just a guy stuck in an elevator with wet socks like the rest of us." He laughed. And for the first time in weeks it felt real. She pushed her card out. He stepped aside and watched her go. The hallway lights reflected off the polished floor as she walked away. For some reason he didn't rush back to his office. He stood there for a while, watching the elevator doors close again. There was something about her, something grounded, unshaken, real. He didn't know it yet, but that brief moment, those 10 minutes in a broken elevator, would be the quiet beginning of something neither of them saw coming. It had been a week since the elevator incident, but for Damien, it lingered. He'd been through hundreds of conversations in his life. Interviews, negotiations, carefully crafted pitches. But the 10 minutes with Elena had stuck with him. There was no agenda, no posturing. Just presence. And honesty. Two things he'd rarely encountered since stepping into the world of million-dollar deals and endless expectations. Each evening he found himself staying a little later. Some part of him was hoping, without admitting it, that they'd cross paths again. And they did. Briefly. Sometimes just a nod in the hallway. A small smile. Nothing more. Elena had noticed the shift too. He wasn't just the CEO anymore. He was Damien. The man who asked questions and listened. Who remembered her name. Who had said thank you like he meant it. But she wasn't naive. She'd lived enough life to know that people in his world didn't look twice at women in hers. And even if they did, it never lasted. Still, that Thursday evening when the rain returned, he stayed late. And so did she. Her shift had barely started when Rosa called in a panic. Mila had come down with a high fever, and the medicine they had wasn't working. "I'll come home early," Elena said immediately, concern in her voice. "Don't worry." But she knew she needed the money from this shift. One absence meant a tighter budget, and groceries were already thin this week. By the time she finished the 36th floor, her nerves were frayed. It was nearing midnight. The buses had stopped running due to flooded routes. She stood by the lobby window watching the downpour, clutching her phone and debating whether to call a cab she couldn't afford. That's when she heard his voice behind her. "Rough night?" She turned. Damien stood there, hair slightly damp, sleeves rolled up, jacket missing. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man trying to find something solid in a shifting world. "Storm shut down the buses," she said. "I'll figure something out." "Let me drive you," he offered. She shook her head quickly. "I don't want to trouble you." "You wouldn't be. I've got time. And four-wheel drive." Still she hesitated. He picked up on it. "I'm not asking for anything, Elena. Just offering a ride." Her eyes searched his, and after a moment she nodded. The drive was quiet at first. The streets were slick and empty. Radio off. Just the steady beat of rain on the windshield. "You okay?" he asked gently. She exhaled. "My niece is sick. My sister's overwhelmed. I feel like I'm always one step behind." He nodded. "I know that feeling." They stopped at a red light. She looked at him. "Do you?" He turned toward her. "I've built everything I thought I wanted. But I still feel like I'm chasing something that keeps moving further away." They held that silence. A shared space neither of them had expected. A moment later he spoke again. "You don't have to go home tonight. I mean, if you're worried about the storm. I have a guest room. Private. Safe. No pressure. Just in case it helps." She looked out the window. The rain showed no signs of slowing. She turned back. "All right. Just for tonight." His penthouse was clean, quiet, filled with expensive furniture that somehow felt cold. But he brought her a blanket, made tea, and offered her the guest room without lingering. "Anything you need, just knock," he said. She sat on the edge of the bed, soaked socks now warm again. She hadn't expected this, kindness without condition. She hadn't realized how long it had been since someone simply gave without asking. An hour passed. She couldn't sleep. Neither could he. She knocked on his door softly. Tea still hot. He opened the door, surprised, but not displeased. They sat on the couch, mugs in hand. "I haven't talked to someone like this in a long time," he admitted. "Me either," she whispered. They talked for hours, about everything. Childhood memories, regrets, lost dreams. Elena told him about nursing school, about her father, about the way people stopped seeing her after she put on a uniform. Damien spoke of pressure, of image, of never knowing who truly cared. It wasn't romantic, not at first, but it was real. By the time the clock neared 3 a.m., Elena leaned back against the cushion, quiet. He looked at her, a gentleness in his gaze. "I'm not trying to complicate your life," he said carefully. "But I see you, Elena. I really do." She looked at him then, longer, deeper. That's the first time in years someone said that and meant it. Neither of them planned the moment that followed. They didn't speak as they leaned in. Just breath, closeness, and a sudden courage to let walls fall. It wasn't about passion or escape. It was about two people, tired of pretending they were fine, finally finding stillness in each other. When morning light crept through the windows, Elena stood at the edge of the guest room, her bag in hand. He met her at the door. "I didn't expect this," she said quietly. "Neither did I." She hesitated. What now? He didn't have an answer. So she left. Not in anger. Not in shame. Just quietly. Like always. But something had changed. And neither of them could unfeel it. Elena didn't plan to see Damien again. Not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't afford to. That night had been unexpected, tender, even healing. But life didn't stop just because your heart whispered maybe. She returned to work as usual. Same floor. Same cart. Same quiet routine. She avoided the 36th floor on nights he was there. If he noticed, he didn't show it. Weeks passed. Her body, however, had other plans. First, it was exhaustion. A bone-deep fatigue that even sleep couldn't fix. Then the nausea started. Subtle at first, then sudden. By the third time she found herself crouched over the bathroom sink before her shift, she couldn't ignore it anymore. Rosa noticed. "You've been off," she said one morning, handing Elena a glass of water. "You okay?" "I think it's just stress," Elena muttered. Rosa tilted her head. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Elena looked away. She'd taken the test 2 days before. 3 of them, actually. The result was clear. Pregnant. But not just pregnant, pregnant with triplets. The ultrasound technician had blinked twice, then turned the monitor for Elena to see. "There are 3, she had said gently. 3 heartbeats. Strong ones." Elena had stared at the screen, her mouth dry. Her first thought wasn't joy. It wasn't even fear. It was how. How would she afford this? How could she protect them? What kind of life could she give 3 children, on her salary in their apartment, with everything already stretched thin? She hadn't told Damien. She didn't know how. What would she say? "Hey, remember that one night you offered me tea and kindness and I let my guard down for the first time in years? Surprise, now I'm carrying 3 lives inside me." She didn't even know if he'd believe her. And even if he did, would he think she had planned it? Would he walk away? Offer money? Call his lawyers? No, she needed time. Space. To think. To breathe. But the universe had other ideas. One evening, while Elena was at the pharmacy buying prenatal vitamins, Rosa found something in her coat pocket. A crumpled appointment slip from the OB/GYN. The name. The date. The words "triplet pregnancy" confirmed. Rosa's jaw dropped. She didn't call Elena. She called Damien. She still had the office number scribbled on a notepad from the night she'd helped Elena apply for a staff badge. She didn't know what else to do. "Mr. Cole?" she said shakily when he answered. "This is Damien. I'm Elena's sister. I know you probably weren't expecting this, but I think you need to know what's going on." That same night, as Elena stepped off the bus, tired and sore, she saw Damien waiting outside her building. He stood by his car, hands in his pockets, eyes heavy but calm. She froze. "How did you?" Rosa called me. She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. I didn't want to tell you like this, she said, voice cracking. He walked toward her. Is it true? She nodded. He paused. Are you okay? Her eyes filled. I don't know. He didn't speak for a moment. Then quietly, you're not alone in this. She looked up sharply. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because I mean it. She blinked back tears. I didn't plan this, she whispered. I didn't either, he replied. But here we are. They stood in silence again. Not the cold kind. The kind that wraps around two people who know everything just changed. Come with me, he said. Not to fix it. Not to control it. Just to talk. They sat in a cafe a few blocks away. Over herbal tea and late-night pastries, they discussed the impossible. 3 babies. Her health. Their future. I don't want anything from you, Elena said. I can do this on my own. He looked at her, almost offended. You shouldn't have to. I'm not looking for a payout or a name on a birth certificate. I'm not offering one. She frowned. Then what are you offering? Presence, he said. Support. If you'll let me. She studied him. Why? Because you matter, he said simply. Because they matter. Elena didn't know what to say. She'd prepared for rejection. She hadn't prepared for kindness. The next week, Damien accompanied her to a doctor's appointment. He sat beside her in the waiting room, one hand nervously bouncing on his knee. When the doctor called her name, she looked at him. Coming? He stood immediately. Inside, the doctor placed the gel on her stomach and guided the ultrasound wand across her skin. There was again 3 steady heartbeats. 3 tiny lives. Damien's eyes widened as he saw the flickers on the screen. That's real, he said quietly. Elena looked over. He wasn't scared. He wasn't angry. He looked in awe. After the appointment, he walked her home. As they neared her building, he turned to her. We don't have to rush anything, but I want to be in their lives. And yours if you'll let me. She stopped walking. You're serious about this? He nodded. Completely. Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, from relief. Because for the first time in a long time, someone had chosen to stay. Not out of obligation, but out of heart. It didn't take long for the news to leak. A blurry photo. A whisper in the right circles. A quiet rumor that exploded like wildfire. Damien Cole, billionaire CEO, linked to janitorial staffer, expecting children. Within 48 hours, the headlines took over. From broom closet to boardroom, CEO's shocking romance with cleaner. Gold digger or Cinderella? Internet divided over Damien Cole's baby bombshell. Elena's face, once invisible, was suddenly everywhere. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't prepared for the way people could twist a story they didn't understand. They called her names online, speculated about her motives, made memes out of her pregnancy. Some accused her of trapping him. Others accused him of taking advantage of her. The worst part? None of them knew the truth. Damien was furious. He'd built a life of calculated privacy. But this was different. They weren't attacking his reputation. They were attacking her. He tried to contain it. His legal team sent cease and desist letters. His PR team released a carefully crafted statement. Mr. Cole remains committed to his private life. Any assumptions regarding his personal relationships are unfounded and will not be addressed further. But it wasn't enough. The media didn't care about truth. They cared about chaos. At Cole and Hartman, murmurs buzzed through the hallways. Some staff avoided Elena's gaze when she came to clean. Others stared openly, like she was a scandal in human form. One evening, as she scrubbed the chrome sink in the executive restroom, she overheard 2 junior executives whispering near the door. Heard she's having 3. With a billionaire. Can you even imagine? She probably planned the whole thing. Elena froze, hand mid-wipe. Her stomach churned, not from morning sickness but from humiliation. She left early that night. When she got home, Damien was already there, sitting with Rosa and Mila, flipping through a children's book. Elena pulled him aside, eyes glassy. I can't keep doing this. He frowned. What happened? They're making me feel like I'm nothing. Like I used you. Like I'm a stain on your life. His face hardened. That's not true. But that's how they see me. He looked at her for a long time. Then quietly said, then maybe it's time they see me choosing you, out loud. Elena shook her head. No. I don't want a press stunt. I don't want you to fix this with a photo op. He nodded. I know. And I wouldn't insult you like that. Later that week, Damien called an emergency board meeting. His board of directors, older, suited, and concerned about the company's image, didn't hold back. This kind of attention is dangerous, one said. You're risking the brand, another warned. You're the face of this empire, a third added. And you've aligned yourself with someone from a background that doesn't reflect our values. Damien's jaw tightened. What values are those exactly? He asked calmly. Silence. Because if your values mean silencing compassion, humility, and love, I want no part of it. They tried to reason with him. He listened. And then he stood. I built this company. And if you think I'd sacrifice the people I care about to save a brand that I created with integrity, then maybe this isn't the company I thought it was. And with that he walked out. He returned home that night quieter than usual. Elena greeted him at the door. How bad was it? They weren't thrilled, he admitted. But I said what needed to be said. She rested her hand on his chest. I didn't ask you to fight them. I know. But I'm not going to let anyone shame you for being part of my life. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me more than I ever knew I needed. Tears welled in her eyes again, but not from pain this time. From being seen. Truly seen. In the days that followed, things didn't magically disappear. The whispers continued. The headlines persisted. But something started shifting. A new narrative began to emerge, one of respect, not ridicule. An article appeared in a women's magazine titled, The Cleaner Who Carried Herself with Grace, and a CEO Who Chose Her Anyway. It wasn't about power or money. It was about character. And slowly the tide began to turn. Spring crept into the city with soft light and gentle warmth. The air smelled like something was starting over. So were they. Damien had stopped caring about the optics. No more strategic meetings. No more staged dinners. For the first time in years, his schedule made room for real life. He wasn't preparing speeches or managing image consultants. He was helping Elena put together a crib, holding her hand during sonograms, and learning how to fold impossibly tiny clothes. At first, she kept expecting the shift to be temporary. A phase. A sweet moment before reality snapped him back to his high-rise world. But it never did. He kept showing up. Not as a businessman. As a man. As a partner. One afternoon, while Elena sat with her feet propped up on the couch, exhausted from a checkup, he knelt in front of her with a notebook in his hand. Okay, he said. So far we've narrowed it down to 6 names per child. But if we're going to avoid complete chaos, we've got to eliminate at least half. She laughed genuinely. This is what keeps you up at night? No, he said, smiling. That's the heartburn. The names just slow it down. Their laughter filled the room. Easy. Natural. Real. But it wasn't always easy. Pregnancy with triplets took a toll on Elena's body. There were hospital visits, swelling, mood swings, moments when fear overwhelmed her. She wasn't used to letting anyone carry the weight for her. But Damien never flinched. When she cried, he stayed. When she pushed him away, he came closer. One evening, she sat at the edge of the bed, hand on her belly, silent. He joined her quietly. Talk to me. She didn't speak right away. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? That this is too good. That something's going to go wrong. That you'll wake up and decide this was a mistake. Damien took her hand. Let me be clear. I didn't fall into this by accident. I chose this. I choose you, every single day. She looked at him, eyes filled with emotion. Why? Because you remind me of everything I forgot I needed, he said. You're not perfect. Neither am I. But this us, it's real. And I want it. A week later, he took her to the small rooftop garden of the building he'd just purchased for her clinic project. It overlooked the community she had grown up in, the place she still called home. "I want you to build something here," he told her. "Not just for you, but for women like you. The ones the world forgets." She turned to him, tears welling. "You remembered." "Of course I did." Then, without a big speech or an audience, he knelt, this time without a notebook. Just a small ring in his hand. Simple. Elegant. Real. "Elena, I'm not proposing because it's what people expect. I'm proposing because you're the only thing that's ever made me feel grounded. Will you build a life with me, however imperfect, however unexpected it started, on purpose?" She didn't hesitate. Yes. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. Because it was true. They began preparing together, not just for the babies but for life after the chaos. Elena enrolled in evening classes to slowly finish her nursing degree. Damien cleared space on his calendar, choosing mentorship over micromanagement at his company. Together they attended birthing classes, read parenting books, argued over car seats and nursery wallpaper. They weren't always graceful, but they were always present. They turned fear into planning, doubt into laughter, distance into closeness. The life they were creating wasn't built on one unexpected night. It was built on 1,000 intentional choices that followed. The day came sooner than expected. It was just past 3 a.m. when Elena woke with a sharp pain that tightened across her belly. At first she thought it was another false alarm. But then the pressure returned, stronger, more insistent. Damien was already sitting up before she could say a word. "Hospital?" he asked. She nodded, eyes wide. "It's time." The ride was quiet, tense, electric. No music. Just her breathing and his hand gripping hers tightly at every red light. Hours later, in a private room surrounded by monitors and soft encouragement from nurses, 3 tiny cries filled the air one after another. 3 daughters. 3 beautiful, healthy, fierce little girls. They named them Isla, Naomi, and Camila. Elena cried as she held them. So did Damien, without shame. No cameras, no press. Just the raw, beautiful chaos of new life. In the days that followed, their apartment was filled with visitors, gifts, and an entirely new rhythm. Feedings, diapers, late nights, exhaustion so deep it made them delirious. But even through the sleepless fog, they smiled. They were a team. And somehow, in the middle of it all, they found time to plan a wedding. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. It wasn't extravagant. No high-profile guest list. No designer dress flown in from Italy. Just a garden behind a small community church, a few rows of chairs, and the people who mattered most. Rosa was the maid of honor. Damien's mentor from his startup days officiated. Mila tossed petals across the aisle, giggling with every step. Elena wore ivory. Damien wore gray. The babies, swaddled in lace, slept peacefully in the arms of their grandmother's best friend. As Damien stood at the altar, he didn't see the cleaner from the hallway anymore. He saw the woman who had quietly rearranged the furniture in his life and made room for something honest. When Elena reached his side, her eyes sparkled. "You sure about this?" she whispered. He smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything." They exchanged vows handwritten over coffee and baby bottles. Simple. Heartfelt. No promises of perfection. Just commitment, partnership, and the daily choice to show up, even on the hard days. When they kissed, the crowd clapped, cheered, and cried. But the moment belonged to them. Afterward, at the modest reception held in the community center where Elena used to volunteer, Damien gave a short speech. "I thought success was measured in numbers, in board votes and media coverage. But I was wrong. Success, real success, is measured in how deeply you're willing to love, how much you're willing to grow, and who you become when you finally let yourself be known. This woman, my wife, taught me that. And these girls, they're going to grow up knowing that their mother was never just anything. She was everything." The room stood still in silence. Then applause erupted. Months passed. Damien stepped back from daily operations at the company. He mentored young entrepreneurs, spoke at local schools, and changed the tone of Cole and Hartman from the inside out. Elena opened her clinic the following spring, a small maternal care center for low-income women and young mothers, offering support she'd once needed and couldn't afford. The clinic bore her late father's name. Every week, she walked those halls with a stroller in tow and confidence in her stride. Nurses greeted her warmly. Patients smiled in recognition. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen. No. And she never forgot who she was, because that woman had fought to become the one she is now. Maybe you know someone like Elena. Maybe you are someone like Elena. Someone who's been overlooked, underestimated, pushed to the side, but never gave up. If this story moved you even a little, leave a comment below. Share it with someone who's still waiting for their breakthrough. Remind them that the right people will see their worth. That love can come in the most unexpected ways. That life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. And if you believe in second chances, in real love, and in rising above what the world says you deserve, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us for more stories just like this. Because the world needs more than fairy tales. It needs truth wrapped in hope.